Okay, I believe we are being recorded. Zok the Heilige Gemara. So yesterday, I just want to review what we did yesterday because it was a little bit complicated. Yesterday, we started off today by reviewing the three shittas in what is the halacha if a woman says, I'm not going to have a no from the brios, from anybody. So we had a three-way machlokes shot in the Mishnah. There was the first part of Ula that said when she says, I'm answering myself from all brios, she surely doesn't mean to answer herself to her husband or to answer herself to have a no from her husband. So her husband's never included in the Isser. Then there was Rav Ashit who said, no, of course she means to answer herself to have a no from her husband. The reason why he can't be mefer is because she can survive off leket shikha and peah. So it's not an inu nefesh. And then the third pshat was the pshat of Reb Nachman, who says that her neder is dynamic. And in fact, while she's married to her husband, the neder is not going to be chal on her husband, and she's allowed to have enough from her husband. But if in the future he divorces her, then the neder will be chal, and she will not be able to have enough from him. That was the first thing that we did yesterday. The next thing we did yesterday was a woman who is also to have enough from anybody. She could still survive, the Mishnah tells us, because she could live off leket, shikha, and peah, which are hefker. So by her taking leket, shikha, and peah, she is not violating an Isra no from the person who provided that leket, shikha, and peah, is because she's not getting it from that person. She's just taking it from hefker. Break the Gemara, what about Meiser Ani? Why can't Meiser Ani also be an option for her to survive off when she makes an Isra no? And to add to the question is, in fact, there's a brisa that says just that she could take Meiser Ani. So the question is, what is the machlokes between our Mishnah, who seems to hold that she can't take Meiser Ani because it doesn't list it, and the brisa that lists and says that she could take Meiser Ani? So the Gemara at first wanted to say that there's a machlokes whether or not Meiser Ani, there's a din of Tovis and all. There's a machlokes as to whether or not the person giving the Meiser Ani has a right to pick who he's giving it to, and if he has the right to pick who he's giving it to, then it's quite understandable that whoever he gives it to is benefiting from him. So then he wouldn't be able to give it to this woman. The Gemara ends up abandoning this suggestion, and the Gemara ends up saying that everybody holds that Meiser Ani, you do have the choice of who to give it to, and therefore you're giving them a no, which would explain our Mishnah's position, but not the Brise's position, that does give her the option of taking Meiser Ani. But before we get to the final explanation of the Mishnah, I just want to elaborate a little bit about what we learned about Meiser Ani. So the first thing the Gemara said was that whether or not Meiser Ani makes tevel is linked directly to whether or not there's Tovis Hana b'Meiser. So to explain more thoroughly, making tevel, we know that if you have produce that's mechuyev in trumas and meisers, if you didn't take truma off of it and you ate part of that tevel, you're chayv misa. It's misa b'dei shamayim. What if you took off truma? You took off meiser rishon, but you didn't take off meiser ani, and you ate that tevel. It's surely not allowed to be eaten, of course. But if you ate that tevel, would you be chayv misa b'dei shamayim? That was the question. The Gemara proves, in fact, that you would be chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. How does the Gemara prove that you would be chayiv misa b'dei shamayim? Because of a combination of two psukim. It says in the pasuk, ki sechala la'aser es kol meiser tfu'oscha b'shana hashlishis. Now, we know that in the Shemitah cycle, there's two sets of 3 years. In year 1 and 2, each year you take off truma, meiser rishon, and meiser sheni. And in year 3, you take off truma, meiser rishon, and meiser ani. After each set of these 3 years, so meaning in year number 4 and in year number 7, there's a halacha of beer meisers. Whatever residual meiser you still have lying around your house, you got to get it out of your rishus, get it to the ani. If it's a meiser sheni, get it to Yerushalayim. So it says, now you're in year 4, you have to be mevar, you have to be a maishris. So make sure to give it in the Satel Levi, Lager, Loyasim, Valmana, depending on what it is you're talking about. If it's Maisha Rishon or Maisha Ani, get it out of your house. But Achlu B'Sharecha V'Saveyu, they can eat it anywhere. But Achlu B'Sharecha V'Saveyu has to be speaking about Maisha Ani, not Maisha Rishon, because you can eat it anywhere. So from that, we learn that Achlu B'Sharecha is a code word for Maisha Ani. Now let's see where this code word for Achlu B'Sharecha shows up again. The pasuk says in Devarim, "Lo yisucha lecho b'sharecha, ma'aser degancha siroishcha v'tzerecha v'karch v'tzenecha ol derecha asher tidar." And we learned this is speaking about lo yisucha lecho b'sharecha tevel if you had not yet been mafresh ma'aser ani. So from lo yisucha lecho b'sharecha, we say you're not allowed to eat b'sharecha if you have not yet been mafresh ma'aser ani, and we know it's referring to ma'aser ani because lechel b'sharecha was the code word for ma'aser ani. This is where we know that if you're not mafresh ma'aser ani, it remains tevel. Now, once we know it remains tevel, now we can go to the next step of once something's tevel, once we identify ma'aser ani as something that if you don't separate it, it's tevel, and it's tevel d'oraisa that leads to a chiv misa b'deshemayim. What's the connection between that and saying that the toivas anos, that a bailam, that the person who's mavrish to ma'aser ani, he has the right to pick who it goes to. So for that we have a different puzzle. It says v'lo yichalu Hashem es kotche b'nei Yisrael, eis asher yirimu Hashem. It cannot be referring to truma because it's talking about chilul that's before you do separation. Because it says v'lo yichalu es kotche b'nei Yisrael, eis asher yirimu Hashem, that they will in the future be mafresh. So clearly we're speaking about tevel pre-afrasha, and when it says v'lo yechalalu, lo yechalalu means chiv misa. Chilu means chiv misa. So from here we know that we're discussing tevel. We're discussing tevel, and any type of tevel that there's a chiv misa involved. We've already established that there's a chiv misa involved with tevel if you had not yet separated ma'aser ani. So we could plug it into this pasuk. Any type of thing where there's a chiv misa involved, where there's a chiv misa if you eat tevel because you didn't separate it, it's called a harama. You lifted it up, you separated it, you have it in your hand. And the Ran tells us, the Gemara holds, that whenever it says yarimu, you separating it, by definition, you're noised it as well. You have it in your hand and then you give it to the kohen, you give it to the Levi, you give it to the ani, you give it to the recipient. So from here you see any type of tevel on which is a chiv misa, the hafrasha that you have to make an ois tevel, that hafrasha gives you toivas hana, you're going to determine who it goes to. So with this chain of limudim, we established that ma'aser ani, if you're giving it to an ani, there's toivas hana there. So that explains really well our Mishnah, why our Mishnah didn't say that one of this woman's options who's not allowed to have enough from anybody, she could not take ma'aser ani. Why she could not take ma'aser ani is because there's toivas hana there, and she's having hana technically from the person who's giving her the ma'aser ani. So now we're at a loss. So what's put in the brisa that says she could rely on the ma'aser ani? And Rava told us that from the psukim you see that there's two types of distribution of ma'aser ani. There's a v'nasatel Levi, which is the giving. There's definitely a toivas hana, but there's also a pasuk that says v'hinachta b'sharecha. Just leave it in the field and they'll take it. That's really treated like a chikhampeya. So the reason why our Mishnah didn't list ma'aser ani is because the ma'aser ani, where you're giving it to the ani, that wouldn't be allowed. The brisa that says ma'aser ani is an option for her. That's referring to the ma'aser ani that you take because it was left and it was abandoned. Now, which is which? How do you know what ma'aser ani? What are you supposed to do with ma'aser ani? So the Ran brings down two ways to understand how this works. So he says over here, the fourth or fifth line, the fourth line from the bottom, in the summer, you just abandon in the gairin. It's nice dry weather, and anybody who wants to come will come and get it. But once the wet, rainy season comes, if you leave it out there, it's going to get wet, it's going to get ruined, then you bring it into your house and mechal. So this is what the These are the two distributions that the pasuk is referring to. One she would be able to take from, and one she wouldn't. There's another pshat who says, so first you have it. So the first pshat was the best way is just to leave it, but once it's going to get muddy and icky, then you'll take it in. The other pshat is no. The best thing is to leave it out there. So the best thing is to actually give it out yourself. But if you use it all, if once the Moisek Shom is over, then you could just put it out. You could just put it out and leave it. You don't have to hold on to it. There's others who learn that depending on where you lived. Sometimes in certain places where it was dry, you leave it out. In other places it was wet. Which I like that pshat a little bit better because according to the Ran pshat, every Ma'aser has two options. So why didn't Amish say Ma'aser Ani? Just like Shemitah in a year where it's a Shemitah year. But if it's a place that you always leave it out or a place where you always distribute it, so then it would be easier to say that the Mishnah is talking about this case, the Brach is speaking about that case. But whatever it is, there are two types of Ma'aser Anis, two types of distributions. One would be allowed to be taken by a woman who's not allowed to have a no, and one would not be allowed. Now we're up to the next case of the Mishnah.
So Ma'aser Ani at the end is a it becomes tevel
if you're not mafresh Ma'aser Ani and someone eats that produce, he's chayiv misa b'dei shamayim.
I would think it's comparable to Ma'aser Sheni.
Ma'aser Sheni, you're also chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. Ma'aser Sheni, you're also chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. If you're not mafresh Ma'aser Sheni, it sure is.
It is tevel?
Yeah. The only discussion was Ma'aser Ani. Every other Ma'aser, it seems to be understood that it would be tevel. The Gemara's discussion was only with Ma'aser Ani. Okay, so now let's go to the next step. The next stage of the Gemara is talking about someone who said, no Kohanim and no Leviim may have a no for me at all. So the question is, how do I give them Truma? We know that by Truma, I definitely have a right to pick who the Truma should go to. And the same thing is with the Meiser. So if that's the case, what does the Mishnah say? If I say all Kohanim and all Leviim may not have enough for me, then anyone can come and take it. Question is how? Why isn't there a problem of Tovas Hana? Zok to Gemara Alma, you see from here, Tovas Hana ain't a moment. It must be that our Mishnah doesn't consider the little value of the fact that I can pick who it goes to. That's not called enough value that because of that there would be a problem of an Isser Hana. Let's look at the very next case in the Mishnah. Kohanim elu Levim elu nehenimli. What if he only picked specific Kohanim who he identified as those that are also to have enough from him, or specific Levim? Then yitlu acher. They're not allowed to take. You'd have to give it to others. But these people who are not allowed to have enough from him, they would not be able to take his Truman Meiser. Why? Why not? It must be because the fact that I'm giving it to them is valuable. So we have two clauses in our Mishnah, back to back. One seems to be based on Tovus in a moment, and one is based on Tovus in a moment. That's a very big steer. Reb Hoshia says, and I think the Gimel brings down that it's somebody else, maybe Reb Yosef. I think he brings down Lo Kasha. It's not shver. Ha Rebbe, the Ha Reb Yosef Bar Yehuda. So this, on its face, is a very difficult teretz. It's a big doiche, because if the Mishnah is offering the opinion of two different Tanaim who argue with each other, A, why did it change the case? And B, why doesn't it tell us that we're talking about two different opinions? But that's the first teretz the Gemara proposes, which the Gemara is not going to remain with. But while we're investigating this option, we at least get to learn the whole new sugya. The Tanya we learned. What if you go and you steal someone's tevel? Your friend has a big pile of tevel. He had not yet been mafresh trumas maisrus, and you went and stole it. You ate it. So besides your bonus misa b'dei shemayim that you get, you also have to pay him. There's no kamal b'dei rabbi by misa b'dei shemayim. Mishalem loy b'mei tevel. You have to pay for the tevel in full, which means that not only do I pay for the 80% or 85% that he would retain after he was mafresh trumas and maisrus, you also have to pay him for the value of the trumas and maisrus. Why? What does he have? It must be that the owner has an ownership stake in the fact that he can decide who to go to. That's valuable too. That's worth money too. And therefore, when the Ganav pays The Balabayis, for stealing his tevel, not only is he paying him the full value in chulin of the chulin portion of this pile, but the eventual truma portion of this pile, he also has to pay, albeit at a reduced rate, but he will have to pay because he deprived the victim of his theft of that toivas and all. Divrei Rebbe. That's what Rebbe holds. He only has to pay the 85%, which is chulin. But whatever he would have benefited from deciding who the truma ma'aser goes to, that's not called that I've taken anything, and therefore I don't have to pay for it.
He doesn't have to pay the Kohen.
Well, so for sure he doesn't have to pay the Yisrael, right? That you would agree with. Now you're asking on the side, is this called theft from the Kohen Levi? So the answer to that is for sure not, because A is, first of all, it's not truma yet, and even if it was truma, it's a moment she'ein le'toiven. Who's going to collect from him? So I don't think he has to pay anybody. So my lab hakamifli, what would be the machlokes? The Rebbe Savar, Rebbe holds toivas anal moment, and that's why not only do I have to pay for the chulin portion, I also have to pay for the truma and meiser portion, pay the Baal what he would have benefited by controlling who it should go to. Rabbi Yosy bar Rabbi Yehuda Savar, toivas na'ein moment. And based on that, let's say our Mishnah, which says that if he asks al kaihanim from having enough from him, they get trumas and maishros anyway. That would go according to Shita of Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, holds toivas na'ein moment. And the next line in the Mishnah that says you cannot give the trumas and maishros to the kaihanim who's not allowed to have enough from you, and to the levim who's not allowed enough from you. That's going according to Rebbe, who holds toivas na'ein moment. Zok Gemara loy. And the Gemara is not yet addressing our Mishnah. The Gemara is saying your understanding of the machlokes, Rabbi and Yosy bar Yehuda, is wrong. And they're not arguing about toivas and or not. The chula alma, toivas and ain't a moment. Everybody else, toivas and is not moment. So if toivas and is not moment, then we clearly understand the shita of Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. You only pay for the chulin, not for the value of the truma and of the meiser. So what's the svara of Rebbe who holds you have to pay in full? The question is, we have tevel. You have not yet separated the trumas and maishros from it. Do you look at it like it has already been separated or not? Rabbi looks at it like it has not yet been separated. So it's all we treat it all like chulin. Therefore, you have to pay the entire value of the entire bundle of grain that you stole. Mashayk and Rabbi Yehuda holds is matana shalei hermu. Since you're going to separate them, we look at it as like it's separated already. If it's separated already, then I only have to pay you for the chulun part that you lost, not for the truma and meiser portion. Because remember, at this point, we want to say the chula alma toivas na einamam. I surely don't have to pay you for the truma portion. It's practically more, but it doesn't make sense to say such a machlokes because v'toivas na einamam mali hermu mali loy hermu. What's the difference if it was separated or not? We want to argue if it wasn't separated, you look at it all like it's chulun. But it's not true. I didn't make him lose that because he's not going to get it anyway. At the end of the day, he's not going to be able to, owner's not going to be able to keep all of that grain for himself. So just because it's not officially truma yet, that doesn't change the fact that he's not going to be able to use the entire amount that I stole. So let's abort this pshat, and now we want to have a new pshat. Elo hainu time. And the Ran tells us that we want to affirm for this brisa, machlokes Rabbi and Yosy bar Yehuda, that it has nothing to do with the question if toivas in a moment or toivas not in a moment. Either way, we still have a machlokes. So let's start. Let's say you hold toivas not in a moment. If you hold toivas not in a moment, who is the one that's difficult to understand? Rebbe, because Rebbe was the one who says that the ganav has to pay the full amount. The question is, why should he pay the full amount if toivas not in a moment? Why should the ganav pay for more than what he stole from the owner? So Gemara, it's a knas. The high time of the Rebbe, kansu rabbanon leganav. We cancel the ganav. We give him a patch. He deserves to pay a little more. You know why? We don't want him to steal. So that's very good if Taivas Hana is moment. What if Taivas Hana, that if Taivas Hana is Einamam? What if Taivas Hana is moment? So then Rebbe is very simple to understand why the Ganav has to pay him back in full. Because you damaged me, my right to select who I'm going to give it to. But how does Rabbi Yosy explain? According to Rabbi Yosy, if Taivas Hana is moment, why is it that the Ganav doesn't have to pay for that Taivas Hana? We're making even though the Balabais really can claim I lost, you stole from me this right to pick which coin and which Levi to give it to, but we're canceling you. You know why we're canceling you? Because we're not happy that you had Tevel around. You shouldn't have even had Tevel around. The moment the Talmid Chacham, we know it says the Talmid Chacham is muftach, never will ever Tevel come out of him. There'll always be only Mesukah the Ketur. Why? Because the moment it becomes Mukhib and Trumas Amaishus, he doesn't do anything. He's Mapper Trumas Amaishus right away. And that's what we want to urge. So that explains the Machloikis, Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda and Rebbe. The Machloikis is, there's two pshatim in the Machloikis. If you want to hold Tevis on a moment, then the reason why Rabbi Yossi say you don't have to pay for it is because we're canceling the Balabayas for not being quick to be Mavish Trumas Amaishus. And if you want to hold Tevis in the moment, then according to Rabbi, we're canceling the Ganev to pay more than he has to. But that doesn't explain our Mishnah. Or what is our Mishnah? Why do you pay? Why you don't pay? So the Gemara comes up with a bomb chiddush, and there's a lot of Torah we have to discuss here. But I want to finish the Gemara so we get the flow, and then we'll break it down into the individual components. Rav Amar addressing our Mishnah, shiny truma in our Mishnah, even though Taivas Anah is Mamain, truma is different. When you're saying that all Kohanim are usher to have enough from you, so let's think about it. The Hainu time of the Yitla Korchoi, why can it take? Why isn't it a violation of the Isra Anah? Because think about it. The Truma Lechaza Elu Kayhana. Truma can only be given to Kayhana, right? If I'm so when something's Truma, what do I have in it? If Tavis Anah moment, I have in it the right that I can control who it goes to, right? But once I say that this should be Asr by not every coin, I've given up my right to pick which coin it goes to because I said no coin could get it. So what is it now? It's like I was mafkir my right to pick which coin it should go to. By me saying every coin is also to have this, that's as if I'm saying whatever schus I have in it to pick the coin, I'm mafkir. Why? Because I don't want to give it to any coin. Since he assured himself to give it to any coin, Shavi Afra Ba'alma. Now it's hefker. So therefore, even if you hold Taivas in a moment, by someone saying no coin may have it, that's the equivalent of saying that I don't have any ownership stake in it anymore. I don't want to pick the coin. I don't want to give it to any coin. Now it's hefker. Now any coin can take it. So Akiva is already looking at me analytical. So let me ask you a question. If I own a car, and I say I'm making myself also to have enough of the car, does that mean anyone can go and take it?
No.
Why not? Doesn't that say anything exist? It's also for me to have enough of my car.
It's
Coin a Malaya car.
it's-
Now I can't have enough to go steal it.
I'm thinking it's not yours. It's not, once you pile it up, it's that 2% is not yours. It's related, it's not yours.
No, not if you'll take us in a moment. I own in it an ownership stake, Lagabe being able to decide who gets it. And I can sell that right.
Now we're saying because
I said I'm not giving it to anybody, so I've given up my right.
and told us, no, it's not more.
Well, no, you were mafkir the Taivas no that you had. You had something of value and you were mafkir. So what's the between that and me saying koin malaya partially? So now it should be hefker. I'm giving up my rights to it. So she should be able to take it.
So the question is if really that truma, every kohen has some kind of connection to it.
The only connection they have to it
Is when you no.
that they're allowed to eat it.
Yeah, but it's really going to be there. Can they sell the right to that to you? Can one
No
go to
individual
another kohen and say, you know, that guy's giving it to me? Why can he not sell it?
Only if it's because it's not his yet. Once
But in
it's given to
case
him.
it comes to me, it's supposed to come to one of us.
So that's a davar shaloi b'loilam. Could I tell you that the field that I'm going to buy, the field that I'm going to buy next week, I'm selling to you now? That's totally if you could tell a davar shaloi b'loilam.
No, but there's a relationship between that. Truma is going to go to one kohen or another. We know that. It's only a question if it's me. That field is.
That's exactly what I say with it. You're going to buy a furnace anyway. So buy it for me.
Try to sell that right.
I'm not trying to sell a furnace. Someone doesn't need a furnace. You need a furnace. So why don't you buy it by me?
That's an option to buy a stock.
Why did you pay him $100 for a furnace if you could pay me $200? So what are you saying? No,
So I know I'm saying is I think that there's a relationship of the truma to the kohen, even if it's not strong yet.
a coin does not have any bias in it whatsoever until it's given to him.
he can't go and grab it on his own.
That's right. He can't go grab it.
You can if he doesn't get it.
Can't grab it.
True.
You can't. If a coin goes to steal. Well, there's actually a shot of coin, right? By something before. That's by something before. The question is if a coin is typhus truma, does he get to keep it? But that's a whole separate child. And I'm sure
There's
we'll
no
get there.
relationship between the truma and the kohen.
I don't think so.
And when after he's mafkir, it counts as if he gave truma. It doesn't. When it becomes hefker, once he says the Balabas says that it's
We say that by him answering any coin to have enough from him, he is also technically being mafker, not the truma. The truma is not his. The right to select who the truma should go to. He's giving up that right.
He's giving up the right.
The truma is not his anymore.
I know I'm close. I'm just missing something. I can see it close, and I'm not seeing something.
So my question is, if when you answer yourself
No way.
from having a no, that means you're giving up your rights to it. So why is it that if I'm answering myself to have enough on my car, why isn't that considered that I'm being mafked?
I'm still. Oh, 1 second. When he says that, is he allowed to sell it? He's not allowed to sell the car either. He's not allowed to do anything to that.
That's right. That's right. So it's like being mafked. But I basically said I cannot have any benefit from it. So that's like being mafked.
No, because I don't want it. I'm certainly going freaking for you.
So the Rashba actually says that that's the halacha. If we look at the run, there's a fascinating run here. Umahashma'ina, Zokter Rani, quoting the Rashba. If someone says the pairs that I own that are free and clear chulin, I'm not going to have any enough from them. Anybody can go take them. And he cannot prevent anybody from taking it. Even though technically he could be shoyal on the nether, and then retroactively it was never usher to him. Even the hash to Mia, but until he's shoyal on his nether, it's hefker. Mia zok to Rajba, heiche de itchel, chayav and l'shalom. So if someone said, koinim alai persu, and someone takes it, nothing I can do. But if I'm shoyal on the nether, this guy has to now pay me back. Why? The kiven the chach, oiker and nether mei karoi. Therefore, kiven the itchel haven lahu hanach peri ki illa itzu alay ma'olam. It's as if they were never usher. If they were never usher, they were always mine. Now you got to pay him back. So this can get very, very messy.
What about if he says kohen malay to his wife, and somebody can come and take his wife? Is that like a
look? It doesn't break a kedusha, but it's mafker. You can't be maf for your wife. Someone says my wife is hefker. It doesn't do anything. Your moment is you could be mafker, but you can't be maf for your wife, especially since she owns you. Im Taimar, Im Kain, Hech Yitlu Kahanim al Korche. So based on this, how could the Kayam take al Korche? Lama lei nachash Dilma Mitchell umisani mididei. What if he's shoyal on the nether? Now, kum dechois, retroactively, they had enough from him. So it's too dangerous for them to take. Because since he could retroactively change it, they are going to end up being over on the Isser Hana. So how could you do it? It's too dangerous. Zok the Iran, lav koshi, that's not fair. And here's a fascinating halakha that none we learned. Hamakalish Aisha al Tnai she'ein oleh hanadar. You were Makadish a woman, you should have been Makadish almanach that you don't have any Nidarim. I don't want any pre-existing conditions. I don't want trouble. I don't want to know that you can't do this, you can't do that. So the Kedushin is on a Tnai that you have no Nidarim. And then V'nimtzu aleh Nidarim, and then we found that she had Nidarim.
So we matched them.
1 second, Einim Ukudeshes. His Kedushin is not a good Kedushin. Umidekatani Einim Ukudeshes, since the Mishnah says Einim Ukudeshes, mashma. It's much that's not a suffix kedushin, because if you could be shoyal, then it's a suffix, right? So it's much she's not kedushin. She can get married to somebody else. So if I married a woman on that she has no nedarim on her, and it turns out there's nedarim on her, the halacha she can go marry somebody else. But that's too dangerous, because if she's going to be shoyal, then I'm afraid she was married to me, and now she's an Eshejish, she's inside. That's playing with fire. So Zok the Rabbi Yochanan Sar Avagav the Tanya Hafam, even though it says there, if she was mated another, the halach is mukudeshes. I'm just ignoring the part about him making the nether because that's not what the Mishnah says, and the Girsha tells us to avoid it. Alma, whatever case you see from here, Avagav the Motzi Mitchell, even though technically she could be shoyal on another at any moment, v'chali kedusha l'mafreya, which is going to retroactively make her married to the first husband, we still let her get married to a second husband. Kol emas taloy Mitchell, loy chayshini Mitchell. Why not? But whatever it is, that is Allah. So Hakanami, therefore, the Raj won't stay. We will let the Kohen take, even though I could be Charlotte my nether, and retroactively it'll cause that he ate from an Isur Hano. Nevertheless, it can't be worse in this case, where if she's soil on the nether, retroactively it makes her into an Ishish. The Mitchell of the kind of Mishul, that's true. But you're not worried about it. That's what the Rashba says. Dr. Ran bombs. The Ran is unbelievable. It's mamish geschmack around. Look what the Ran says. But Nimis topic was it. I think that the Rashba is a little bit off over here. Dr. Helig around. Why? I hold that the moment that he answered something to himself, he was mafkarit, right? So let's take my car. Calling him a lie car, that's like I was mafkarit. So if someone now takes my car, it's as if he was kind from Efker. The Afalpi to Isur Shaboy Holach Ayidei Maskim retroactively, I made it that my car was not usher to me, but I was still mafkarit. It's not my nether that was the thing that made it hefker. When I make a nether, we say automatically it's as if I made a second transaction right beside my transaction of nether, and I was mafkir. That I cannot undo. So even though Avabisha isn't by halach aydei sheila, Kinyan Mamoina shows that in the bottle. He was coined when it was hefker. It's his now, free and clear. You never find anywhere that you can reverse retroactively a hefker. So since at that moment I was mafkir, I can't fix that anymore. That's why the Kohanim could take and they don't have to worry. Because even if he's soil on his nether and retroactively he was allowed to give it to them, it doesn't make a difference. When they took it, it was hefker, and he cannot reverse that hefker. And therefore, if you take my car and now I'm soil on my nether, I can't reverse that.
Unbelievable London. It's unbelievable London, but it's a hair split. I said I want to have an offer from it. It doesn't mean automatically hefker. How did that happen?
Because the hefker, the definition of hefker is when you say, I want nothing to do with this. And you said that. So inadvertently, you're doing whatever it takes to make something hefker.
But it could be shoel.
Yeah, but David,
you could be shoel to take away the isser. And it doesn't change that at that moment, you relinquished your rights to this piece of property.
So when somebody says that to his wife,
you can't be mafker a wife. That's the whole. If you're a wife, you could be mafker. If you would have told your wife, if the halacha would be that if you go to your wife and say "Haray at hefker," yeah, then it would do the same thing. But there is no such halacha of saying "Haray at hefker."
no, but it's in your condition. You don't have any in the dark.
We'll get to there. I don't want to get mixed up. We're going to get back to that case in a second. And the Ran proves his point. The Eloi. If you disagree with that, Vadai Kivan the Nedarim Litzule Alayu Kayamin. We know Nedarim. We always say Nedarim is by definition a davar sheyesh lematirin, because not only can you be shoyal, you're mechuyev to be shoyal on Nedarim. Remember, we said that you're not allowed to keep a nether active, so you're mechuyev to be shoyal on the nether. The mishamachli mikru davar sheyesh lematirin beperak hanoider min hayeret. We learned earlier that Nedarim are supposed to be mushal. So chashish the mitchell. How could you tell me, Rabbi Rajwell, that we're not until they're shoyal on the nether, we wouldn't be worried about it? That can't be a good explanation. Because you have to assume he's going to be shoyal on the nether. You know why? Because that's mandatory. You're mechuyev to be shoyal on the nether.
The guy says, I don't want to have enough from this vehicle for 30 days.
That's something else. That's something else. That's a hefker. That's answering him enough. And when you're answering yourself enough from 30 days, you're not saying I want nothing to do with it. You're saying I want nothing to do with 30 days. That's not hefker. In order to be mafker something, you have to disassociate yourself from it forever. Otherwise, it doesn't qualify as a hefker.
I'm sorry. I would say I don't want to ever wear that suit again. It doesn't mean I want it there to be able to see that I don't want to use it anymore.
Not wearing it is one thing.
I don't want to go to.
No, but that's if you say I'm making another, I shouldn't wear that suit. You're not saying I don't want to have any enough of it. I want to have enough of it. By sitting there, I mean not wearing it. Saying I'm not going to have any enough of it is a lot more than saying I'm not going to wear it. If I say I'm calling him like driving this car, that wouldn't make it efker, because I'm just answering when I'm driving. But I can still ogle at it. I can still turn on the radio, listen to the stereo. So it's only hefker if you make a nether that completely separates you from it. That is considered hefker. It's a way of making hefker.
So when you say Kevin, I can't lean on it.
Correct,
I
right.
can't almost touch it.
I can't even
Use it.
I can't even take a picture of it. I can't even take a selfie in front of it and show it off on Facebook that I'm like everyone does when they go to Florida. They stand in front of her rolls and take a selfie because people maybe someone's going to think that they have a roll. You can't even use it as an influencer, as a TikToker. So now the Iran goes back to the case of Kedushin that Moshe Stern brought up. V'chitanan einu mukadeshes loy shetehei muteres linose. Zok Ram, since you do have to be choshed that she's going to be shayla and Heather. In fact, when it says einu mukadeshes, we cannot say that she can get married to somebody else. She can't. We have to assume that she's going to be shayla on her nether, and therefore we don't let her get married. You can't say that. It's just saying the halacha right now is that she's not mekudeshes, but that doesn't mean we're going to let her get married again. However, the Ran adds another. If you want to argue that when it says any mekudeshes, it means that she can even get married. How could you explain that? She has to be shoyl. We know why we let her get married, because if she does remarry, we know she for sure will not be shoyl on another, because she knows she's going to mess herself up. So normally you have to be chosh to be shoyl on another. But here, when she's the one who's going to mess her life up, you don't have to worry she's going to be shoyl on another. You don't find about her herself that it's in mukdeshes. So that's getting into the thing when he made the nether. But upon him, the Ran has a bombshell chiddush that when you disown something and you want to have nothing to do with it, that constitutes a hefker, and that cannot be reversed. I think it's an interesting point. Akiva doesn't like it.
No, it's just two separate things.
So the Ran
I see a nether not as a. I don't want to vow an ownership of it. I just don't want to have a no. I want you around.
But that's also Hana. That's also Hana. The Ran said when you want no enough from it at all, by definition that's hefker. Who said the syntax of hefker is harei hefker? The syntax of hefker is anything that separates yourself from it.
Went through the studio of hefker, and it's something specific on its own.
So the Ran says not like that.
I know, I hear it.
That's going to get around that hefker doesn't have a syntax. When you create an effect, that's hefker.
It's a result of something else.
Gewaltig.
I know. Listen, chametz b'Pesach. That to me is hefker. That's the level of hefker. I don't want to have anything unknown to it. That's the profile case of not having a no from something is chametz and Pesach. If it's not like that,
that's actually specifically discussed because there's actually a shaila. It could be if I made it hefker, that takes myself away from it. But if it's hefker min Torah, it could be not, and she just never cared. There's actually a specific discussion between something that became hefker because the Torah made it hefker, like chametz and Pesach, if it will also have that same result of being hefker or not.
No, but that tells me what the definition of what hefker is. Whether it's from the Torah or somebody else, it allows me the avenue what hefker becomes.
But there is a shot. Could be an issue that you make yourself, so there you're distancing yourself from it. But if it just becomes also by no, could be that doesn't break your bias. But there's a shot for carrot. That's not for carrot. Hashem's hefker is bigger. So there's actually the Achronim specifically discussed the shadow that you're bringing up. So that is the on the daf stuff. But there's some also very interesting stuff over here. Notice the Gemara says, "Time of the Rebbe is konsu rabbonon leganev kihechad lenigdav." It doesn't say konsu rabbonon legazlan. So it seems like if he did it begeneva, if he took the hevel begeneva, that was the case. Hagoynev tilush chaveri, then this applies. But maybe if he was a gazlan, it wouldn't apply. So what is the difference between a ganev and a gazlan? So the obvious difference between Ganev and Gazlan is the Gazlan is not afraid of the Rebbeinu Shloim and not afraid of his victim. The Ganev is afraid of his victim, but he's not afraid of the Rebbeinu Shloim. And for that reason, the Torah is harsher with him. For that reason, he pays kefil. A Gazlan doesn't pay kefil. And for that reason, he pays daled v'hei if he shechts or sells, right? So you see a Ganev is worse. So there's a very interesting...
In a certain way.
If you look at the Rambam, when the Rambam introduces the concept of Gezela, and when he introduces the concept of Geneva, there's a very big difference in how the Rambam expresses them. In the concept of Gezela, the Rambam says, no, still he goes to the Halach Talmud. But when the Rambam's introducing Geneva, the Rambam adds that if a little child does it, even though he's not in a chinuch, you got to punish him. He says that by Geneva. He doesn't say that by Gzela. What's the difference? So the Reb Chaim says that Gzela means I'm just taking money that's not mine. I'm depriving somebody of his money. That's the whole problem with Geneva, with Gzela. Geneva, there's a Maisa Geneva. There's a Maisa Geneva. You're doing something that's showing that you're more afraid of man than you are of the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's a much bigger avla. By Gzela, the problem is not the Maisa that you did. The problem is the effect. You caused someone a loss of money. It's like being massive. Geneva, you're actually doing a Maisa Aveir, because your Maisa is displaying, I'm afraid of man, I'm not afraid of Hashem. And Geneva is much worse. By Geneva, there's a much bigger reason to cancel him, because of the Maisa HaGeneva. And that's why.
I think there's a better chance of it.
On Geneva?
The same reason why we make sure somebody who's going to mix us.
I hear.
Right?
Good, all right. That's right. Because really, I don't want to be so bad.
Right.
I hear. So that could be the Knaser is Dafka for a gun of not a Goslin. And where does it become apparent? The halacha is Hashelech Yad B'Pikod. You're a shomer, and you decide to start using for yourself what I gave you to watch for me that you had no right to use. What does the Gemara say? Talech is what? It's Kaganev or Kagaslin? It's Kagaslin. Or Shoya Shlemidas? Gaslin, not Ganev. You know why? Because without, all you're doing is you're depriving somebody of his mammon. You're not doing a Maisa Geneva. And by Geneva, the punishment is for the Maisa Geneva. So that's the first thing that I wanted to highlight. The second thing I wanted to highlight is, what is this concept? They canceled him, so he shouldn't let the Tevel remain by him. What is the issue? What are we canceling him about? You could say Pashat Pshat. Tevel is a michshel. Tevel is like having an open pit. You have a hezek there. Anybody can come along and eat it, will be harmed. They'll be chayiv mitzvah b'dei shemayim. So we know that a chaver makes sure that there's never tevel in his rishos. Everything you'll find in his rishos is musukan. So that could be pshat. The knas is we don't want people leaving things around. We don't want people leaving live grenades around, right? Just this week, Rahman Litzlan, an Israeli soldier, was killed because he brought a live grenade into his barracks. They're still investigating what happened to Rahman Litzlan, and it went off. So that's one svar. But there's another svar is there's a mitzvah of afroshas, trumas, and maishras, and we want to be mizaris him to be mekayim the mitzvah, and that's what the kanas is for. There's a very big shaila. Let me ask you a question: is there a mitzvah to be mafresh trumas and maishras? If you don't want to eat meat, is there a mitzvah to shech? If I have a whole field full of produce and I don't need the produce, I don't need it. I don't need it. Do I have to be mafresh trumas and maishras, or can I just ignore the whole thing? I'm sorry.
You can ignore it.
So it's a machlokes. There are shittas who holds there's a mitzvah to be mafresh trumas and maishras.
Why did you mark this up?
No, it's because there's a mitzvah. The Torah gives you a mitzvah to be mafresh trumas and maishras.
That's only once you remove
One
it from the
second.
ground.
So
As long as it's in the ground.
No, I'm saying, of course, it was cut already.
Oh, it's cut.
Yeah, it was cut.
But 1 second, so shechting is saying if it's a shecht and then I don't want to eat you, it's the same
So
thing.
there's a shaila. There's a shaila if there's a mitzvah to shech, or if you only shecht when you need to. There's a big shaila about that. So,
You tell me it's the same
Is there
as
mitzvah
Ruach?
tzitzis or is there mitzvah only?
but
for-
shchita for sure, there's no mitzvah to shecht if you don't want meat. There's no mitzvah to shecht for the sake of
It's
shecht.
not quite
But
the same
by
as-
truma, so that is it like shchita, or is being mafresh trumas and maishras a mitzvah whether or not you want to do it or not? So there's a very fascinating stickle that we discussed once before, and that is, why would I have to be mafresh trumas and maishras? The halacha is, you know, that chita achas poiteres is a kri. If you even are mafresh one little kernel, it's misaken the whole kri. It's not tevel anymore. So why do you have to give so much truma for? And what you have on the one hand, you have chita achas kri, and then the Gemara tells us you have to have 1/20th, 1/30th, 1/40th. What the Gemara telling you? A rich man, a more generous guy is 1/40, more stingy guy is 1/60.
It does.
You only have to give more. What?
The rice, you just give great.
No, the top of the rice.
2% is the rice.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So the Noda B'Yehuda discusses this, and the Noda B'Yehuda says, "I'm going to tell you a chiddush that no one ever said since B'rias Olam. The Rishonim didn't say it. The Gaonim didn't say it. This is my chiddush. Nobody ever said this chiddush. This is what the Noda B'Yehuda writes. And what is this chiddush? Is that the halacha of chita achas potesh as a kri will in fact take off the Isser Tevel from the whole Kri. But you will not be Mekayim the mitzvah of Trumas and Maishus. The mitzvah of Trumas and Maishus, you need to give either 1/40th, 1/50th, or 1/60th. But to be Mesakin the Kri, so that you shouldn't have Tevel, in fact, one Chita will do it. So that is massive Kiddush. That Midaraisa Chita Acha Padesh Kri doesn't mean you're Mekayim the mitzvah of Truma. It just means it's Mesakin the Tevel. But to be Mekayim the mitzvah of a fresh Truma, you have to do it properly. So the problem is that the Tosfos Rit says this. Who's a Rishon, but the Noid of Yehuda never shot a Tosfos Rit. I'm sorry?
You get genius marketing. This is according to
But the Noid of Yehuda never had access to the Tosfos Rit. Tosfos Rit came out in our lifetime. In my lifetime, more Rishonim were printing Sforim than Achronim were, because that's when Moshe Rav Kook was putting out the corrected version, and Chapsi Frankel was putting around them. So the Tosfos Rit came out then, and he said exactly what the Noid of Yehuda said. So you see, there's a clear difference between being Mesak in the Tevel and being Mekayim the mitzvah of Trumas and Maishus. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. This next Gemara is a little bit complicated, but we learned this completely from beginning to end, the Maseches Ksubis, and this is just a Chazara. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Koinim she'eni oisa al piyab. A woman says, I'm making an Isra Anah for my father to have enough for my Siyadayim. I'm not going to do anything for my father. This is not Inu Nefesh, nor is it Devarim Shebeinai Leveina, or Val Pi Avicha. I will not do anything for your father, her husband's father. Val Pi Achi, or for my brother. Val Pi Achicha, or for your brother. The halacha is Einu Yachal Hafer. The husband cannot be made for such another, because again, it's not Inu Nefesh, and it's not Devarim Shebeinai Leveina. What if she said, I'm not going to do anything for you? That's already very relevant. The halacha is Einu Tzarech Lafer. Tanakama says, no afara necessary, because her ma'aseh yadayim are meshubah to her husband. If her ma'aseh yadayim are meshubah to her husband, then she cannot say, I'm not going to do these malachas. So she can't ask her what's not hers. That is the sheet of the Tanakh. Rabbi Kiva says, you're right. The malachas that she's mechuyev to do for her husband, she cannot ask her, no need to make afara. But I recommend that you make the afara anyway, because Shema Yofer Shema Tadif Halov Yosy Simon Nedarim. Let's say she's supposed to do a certain amount of malacha. Let's say $100, just for argument's sake, the value of $100, and she does $110. Now you are over an Isser Kainamis. So to be safe, being that it's impossible to really know exactly what's included in the shibud and what's in excess of the shibud, be mefer. Why aren't the Rabbanan worried about it? Because we're going to soon see in the Gemara that the Rabbanan held, no, actually, the Ksubis, the Rabbanan held that even extra, anything she does is included in the shibud. So there's no concern whatsoever. So the Machlokes Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan is, if she does over and above the bare minimum of what her shibud is, are those ma'aseh yadayim, do they belong to her? And she could answer them, which is what Rabbi Kiva holds. And that's why he suggested make safara. Or do they belong to the husband anyway? And therefore, she cannot answer them anyway, so there's no need to be made for them. And now we have the third shita of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. He's going to be in the spotlight today. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, Yofer, you should make afar, not because of Rabbi Kiva's reason. I disagree with Rabbi Kiva. I also hold that any extra she does is also belongs to the husband and she couldn't ask her. But I'm still suggesting afar. You know why? Because of a different problem. Because Shema Yigar, what if he divorces her down the road? Then those ma'aseh yadayim will become ulcer. And if he wants to marry her again, usahi asura alav, he won't be able to ask her. And if you remember, the Gemara brought a riot from here that when you're mefer devarim shebeinoi leveina, you have to say that the hafara works even after she's divorced, right? That's what the Gemara ended up saying, that the devarim shebeinoi leveina, what's the difference between those devarim and inu nefesh, are that she can't ask her, he can't be mefer to benefit the next husband. But as long as it's relevant to him, his hafara will survive even the divorce. Right? That was the right we brought from here, because Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is saying, make the hafara. It'll come to use after your divorce, where in fact the issue that you put on her ma'aseh yadayim will come into force. Because they don't belong to you anymore. Rabbi Kiva says you should be made for her because she might do work for you right now that doesn't belong to you. That belongs to her. Because she's only mishum to do a certain amount of work for you. If she does more, then you're going to be in trouble. So better be made for it. So no matter what she does, you don't have to worry. You don't have to put a meter on her hands to know when to stop. Okay. So now, so what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is saying is, If she could today make an isser on Maisi Yadayim that aren't going to show up till 20 years in the future when she gets divorced. Is that not a davar shalei b'laylam? So you clearly see that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that a person can aser with a neder a davar shalei b'laylam.
Only when
Amar Shmuel. Shmuel came along and he passed in the halacha Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Remember that obviously tells me that Shmuel holds the Kapsar Shmuel Adam Makdish davar shalei b'laylam. Right, a kainim is like hektish, and you see that Shmuel holds, but the fact that he passed in like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is that Adam Makdish davar shalei b'laylam. For a minute we have a problem because Shmuel also paskin like Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, who holds that ain't Adam Makdish davar shalei b'laylam. Because we had a following case. Hamakdish ma'isi deishtoi. Someone said, my wife's ma'isi daim, which technically I own, I want to make it hektish. So what is the halacha? Harezu oise v'oichelas. She could continue to do malacha and she can eat it. It does not become hektish. Why doesn't it become hektish? So the Ran tells us and he reminds us what we learned from the Gemara Ksubis is it could be speaking even we know there's a rule that why does he get her ma'aseh yadayim? Because he gives her mezainis. So in Ksubis there are two shortim in this Gemara. It could be speaking where he was giving her mezainis. So if he was giving her mezainis, then he should own her ma'aseh yadayim. So why don't they become hektish? She could be mevatel his hektish. Because of Rav Huna, who said a woman could say, a woman at any time could break his shibud on her ma'aseh by saying, don't support me, and I'm not going to give you my ma'aseh. So therefore, even if he's giving her mezainos, it's still oisav he still doesn't own her ma'aseh because she has the right to deny him the ma'aseh at any time she wants. That's one pshat. There was another pshat, if you don't know the Rav Huna, that it's only oisav if he wasn't giving her mezainos. Okay, v'hamoiser. What about what she produces over and above what is included in the mezainis? Reb Meir holds hektish. Now, it's not his. So if it's not his, how does it become hektish? Not his. Zokt Rani brings down from the Gemara over there. It's not hektish now. When she eventually dies, if he survives her, when she eventually dies, the value of those ma'aseh yadayim, whatever money she has from it, whatever she bought from it, from her payroll, for her salary, that becomes hektish. So that means you're literally being makdish to davar shalei b'laylam. Rabbi Yochanan Sadler Amar Chulun. Rabbi Yochanan Sadler said it's Chulun. You know why? Because you cannot be makdish to davar shalei b'laylam. The husband can't be makdish today something that he's going to yash from her in 30 years. It's a davar shalei b'laylam. But Amar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yochanan Sadler, and Shmuel paskin like Rabbi Yochanan Sadler that he cannot be makdish today something that he's not going to get until 30 years ago. Alma eino the makdish davar shalei b'laylam. So you have Shmuel spread in two directions. By Nedarim here in our sugya, which are just like hektish, he says a woman could aser her ma'aseh yadayim today, even though they're not going to show up for 30 years later after she gets divorced. Yet he holds that if the husband tries to make that hektish, it won't work. Can't have it both ways. So you prefaced this all by saying the case that we just brought down about hektish was him being makdish. That doesn't work. But the case by the Nedarim, she said it. She could do it.
Can a person be mekadesh and isha if you hold Adam makdish davar shalei b'laylam? A person can go over to a woman and say, "I'm mekadesh you with ma'aseh yadayim, the first one that you're going to work for me after you get engaged. I'll give it back to you." If he says yes.
It's a good try. Maybe
that's why I thought you said it's not the makdish. I always could be makdish.
Oh, mekadesh. You got it, mekadesh. Gewaltig. So here's our stira. What does Shmuel know? Can you be makdish over shalei b'laylam, like he says in our Mishnah, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, or can you not be makdish over shalei b'laylam, like Shmuel says over here, like Rabbi Yochanan Hasan? So we have the two Rabbi Yochanans that are the two titans are against each other. If you want to say that when Shmuel paskined like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Let's think about it. There's many facets to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri did say that Adam, she could aser a davar shalei b'loylam. But he also argues on Rabbi Akiva and holds like the Rabbanan, right? He holds the reason why the husband should be made for her is not because she might do extra. I'm not worried about extra. In that respect, I agree with the Chachamim that any extra she earns also belongs to him. I'm worried about the stuff after the Gerushin. So, in fact, there's two facets to what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said. A is Adam could aser davar shalei b'loylam, but B is that any extra that she earns also belongs to the husband, and that wouldn't be a reason why the husband should be made. So, Frek the Gemara, maybe the Chitei Makika Amar Allah Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, when Shmuel paskin like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, he didn't mean to paskin like everything that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said. He just meant that I disagree with Rabbi Akiva and that I hold that the extra that she produces while she's married to him also belongs to the husband. So that's not logical because there's so many easier ways where he could have said it, like halacha karabana or like ein halacha Rabbi Akiva. Why, if you were only trying to paskin on the shaila of hadafa, why would you blame this on Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? So Zog the Gemara, there's three ways Shmuel should have expressed it if that's all he meant to say. Either he could have said halacha Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri behadafa, and paskin like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, but only related to the fact that he holds that the hadafa also belongs to the husband, and therefore she can't answer it. So he doesn't have to be made for that part. Inami, what Shmuel could have said was halacha ketana kama, or inami ein halacha Rabbi Akiva. So why did he say such a thing? It must be that if he said halacha Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, that's what he holds. Ella, Amar Rabbi Yosef. In fact, there's a difference between hektish, where you cannot be makdash over shalei b'loylam, just like Rabbi Yochanan and Sandler said, and kainamos, where you could aser a davar shalei b'loylam, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said. Tiny kainamos, you find kainamos are much more powerful than hektish itself. And let me ask you a question. Can I go and say, Akiva, I'm being makdish your animal? I can't do that. But could I say, I'm putting a nisha kainim on your animal that I can't have enough from it? So you see, kainim is much far reaching than hektish. So Zok Gemara, Amar Elamar B'Yosef, shiny kainamis, Hayil b'Adam Oyser Peres Chaveri Alav. Since I could say that Akiva, your pair should be also to me, therefore I can also Oyser Nami Davar Shaloi Bala. Therefore, I could also alter upon myself a Davar Shaloi Bala. So therefore, don't ask me a kasha from hektish to kainamais. Kainamais works even though it's a davar shaloi b'loylam, even though hektish doesn't work.
It's not because of control. That's like a little bit like the guys tell the claimer, since I can't be makdish yours, I'll be fighting on you. That's because you always have control over yourself. And you're
so you're bringing up a very, very good point. I can answer your parish on me because I'm involved, and I can answer my parish on you because they're my parish.
Correct.
But I can't answer his parish on you.
No, because you don't have there's no.
Oh, Amar Abaye. Vishlama Adam Oyser Parish Chaveri Alav. Why can I answer Akiva's parish on me? Shari Adam Oyser Parish of Ashal Chaveri. Because I can answer my parish on you. In other words, I have a connection to it. Either because I'm putting the Isser on me or I'm putting the Isser on my parish. Eliezer Davar Shaloi B'Loylam Al Chaveri. How can I answer a davar shaloi b'loylam? How can a woman answer her ma'aseh yadayim of the future on her husband, on her ex-husband? How could you do that? I can't say, Akiva, your parish should be also for you. So that's exactly what your kash is. How could you possibly make such a stretch? So we're still stuck. How is it that Shmuel holds you cannot be makdash a davar shaloi b'loylam, yet here she could answer her ma'aseh yadayim that aren't here on somebody else? So we're stuck now. I'm just going to read this, but really we're going to start from here tomorrow. Is by Imeris. I know we won't be able to sleep tonight if we at least don't get a hint of what the answer is going to be. But Imeris, Yikachu Yodai Loisayen. She's not answering her ma'aseh yadayim. That's a davar shaloi b'loylam. She's answering my hand. My hand should be also to you. Legabe, not everything about it. Not legabe slapping. I'm allowed to slap you. Only legabe what it produces. You own. I'm creating an Isser on my hand. But what part of my hand? The malacha that it produces. Halacha is, Zokevuna, My hand should be usher legabi what they create. Her hands are here right now. So I'm offering my hands to you, legabi the malacha that they're going to do in 20 years. But that potential is already in my hand right now. Break the Gemara, even if she says that, is it going to work? Are her hands not meshubah to her husband right now? Right now she's married to him. Right now her hands are meshubah to her baal. So how could she answer her hands now to her baal? She's saying, when you're going to divorce me, that's when I want my hands to be usher. So now we're getting a little bit into the Dover Shaloi Bal territory, which we'll pick up tomorrow. But that's where the Gemara is headed to explain why. So in fact, what the Gemara is saying is there's no difference between Hektish and Kainamais. The way she structured the Isser by Kainamais was she put the Isser on her hand, and the way he structured the Isser when Makish his wife's Ma'asidayim was he's Makish directly to Ma'asidayim, not his ownership stake in his wife's hands. Okay, we will stop here and we will be Mamshech tomorrow. A beautiful, beautiful Gemara. And it's